This is Terry Bible Night, your reader. We are on Chapter 3 of Rick Riordan's Sea of Monsters, which is the second part of the Percy Jackson and the Olympians series. Chapter 3 is called We Hail the Taxi of Eternal Torment. Annabeth was waiting for us in an alley down Church Street. She pulled Tyson and me off the sidewalk just as a fire truck screamed past, heading for Merriweather Prep. "Where'd you find him?" she demanded, pointing at Tyson. Now, under different circumstances, I would have been really happy to see her. We'd made our peace last summer, despite the fact that her mom was Athena and didn't get along with my dad. I'd missed Annabeth probably more than I wanted to admit. But I'd just been attacked by cannibal giants. Tyson had saved my life 3 or 4 times, and all Annabeth could do was glare at him like he was the problem. "He's my friend," I told her. "Is he homeless?" "What does that have to do with anything? He can hear you, you know. Why don't you ask him?" She looked surprised. "He can talk?" "I talk," Tyson admitted. "You are pretty." "Oh, gross." Annabeth stepped away from him. I couldn't believe she was being so rude. I examined Tyson's hands, which I was sure must have been badly scorched by the flaming dodgeballs, but they looked fine. Grimy and scarred, with dirty fingernails the size of potato chips, but they always look like that. "Tyson," I said in disbelief, "your hands aren't even burned." "Of course not," Annabeth muttered. "I'm surprised the Lastrygonians had the guts to attack you with him around." Tyson seemed fascinated by Annabeth's blonde hair. He tried to touch it, but she smacked his hand away. "Annabeth," I said, "what are you talking about?" What? Lastrygonians, the monsters in the gym. They're a race of giant cannibals who live in the far north. Odysseus ran into them once, but I've never seen them as far south as New York before. I can't even say that. What would you call them in English? She thought about it for a moment. Canadians, she decided. Now come on, we have to get out of here. The police will be after me. That is the least of our problems, she said. Have you been having the dreams? The dreams about Grover? Her face turned pale. Grover? No, what about Grover? I told her my dream. Why? What were you dreaming about? Her eyes looked stormy, like her mind was racing 1,000,000 miles an hour. Camp, she said at last. Big trouble at camp. My mom was saying the same thing, but what kind of trouble? I don't know exactly. Something's wrong. We have to get there right away. Monsters have been chasing me all the way from Virginia, trying to stop me. Have you had a lot of attacks? I shook my head. None all year, until today. None? But how? Her eyes drifted to Tyson. Oh. What do you mean, oh? Tyson raised his hand like he was still in class. Canadians in the gym called Percy something. Son of the sea god? Annabeth and I exchanged looks. I didn't know how I could explain, but I figured Tyson deserved the truth after almost getting killed. Big guy, I said, you ever hear those old stories about the Greek gods, like Zeus, Poseidon, Athena? Yes, Tyson said. Well, those gods are still alive. They kind of follow Western civilization around, living in the strongest countries. So, like now, they're in the U.S. And sometimes they have kids with mortals, kids called half-bloods. Yes, Tyson said, like he was waiting for me to get to the point. Well, Annabeth and I are half-bloods, I said. We're like heroes in training, and whenever monsters pick up our scent, they attack us. That's what those giants were in the gym, monsters. Yes. I stared at him. He didn't seem surprised or confused by what I was telling him, which surprised and confused me. So, you believe me? Tyson nodded. But you are son of the sea god? Yeah, I admitted. My dad is Poseidon. Tyson frowned. Now he looked confused. But then a siren wailed. A police car raced past our alley. We don't have time for this, Annabeth said. We'll talk in the taxi. A taxi all the way to camp, I said. You know how much money? Trust me. I hesitated. What about Tyson? I imagined escorting my giant friend into Camp Half-Blood. If he freaked out on a regular playground with regular bullies, how would he act at a training camp for demigods? On the other hand, the cops would be looking for us. We can't just leave him, I decided. He'll be in trouble, too. Yeah, Annabeth looked grim. We definitely need to take him. Now, come on. I didn't like the way she said that, as if Tyson was a big disease we needed to get to the hospital, but I followed her down the alley. Together, the three of us sneaked through the side streets of downtown while a huge column of smoke billowed up behind us from my school gymnasium. Here, Annabeth stopped us on the corner of Thomas and Trimble. She fished around in her backpack. I hope I have one left. She looked even worse than I'd realized at first. Her chin was cut. Twigs and grass were tangled in her ponytail as if she'd slept several nights in the open. The slashes on the hems of her jeans looked suspiciously like claw marks. "What are you looking for?" I asked. All around us, sirens wailed. I figured it wouldn't be long before more cops cruised by looking for juvenile delinquent gym bombers. No doubt Matt Sloan had given them a statement by now. He'd probably twisted the story around so Tyson and I were the bloodthirsty cannibals. "Found one, thank the gods." And Annabeth pulled out a gold coin I recognized as a drachma, the currency of Mount Olympus. It had Zeus's likeness stamped on one side and the Empire State Building on the other. "Annabeth," I said, "New York taxi drivers won't take that." "Stethi," she shouted in ancient Greek, "O harma diabolis." As usual, the moment she spoke in the language of Olympus, I somehow understood it. She'd said, "Stop, chariot of damnation." Well, that didn't exactly make me feel real excited about whatever the plan was. She threw her coin into the street, but instead of clattering on the asphalt, the drachma sank right through and disappeared. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, just where the coin had fallen, the asphalt darkened. It melted into a rectangular pool about the size of a parking space, bubbling red liquid like blood. Then a car erupted from the ooze. It was a taxi, all right, but unlike every other taxi in New York, it wasn't yellow. It was smoky gray. I mean, it looked like it was woven out of smoke, like you could walk right through it. There were words printed on the door, something like "Gyarsurus," but my dyslexia made it hard for me to decipher what it said. The passenger window rolled down and an old woman stuck her head out. She had a mop of grizzled hair covering her eyes, and she spoke in a weird, mumbling way like she'd just had a shot of Novocaine. Passage. 3 to Camp Half-Blood," Annabeth said. She opened the cab's back door and waved at me to get in, like this was all completely normal. "Ha!" the old woman screeched. "We don't take his kind." She pointed a bony finger at Tyson. "What was it? Pick on big and ugly kids' day?" "Extra pay," Annabeth promised. 3 more drachma on arrival." "Done!" the woman screamed. Reluctantly, I got in the cab. Tyson squeezed in the middle. Annabeth crawled in last. The interior was also smoky gray, but it felt solid enough. The seat was cracked and lumpy, no different than most taxis. There was no plexiglass screen separating us from the old lady driving. Oh, wait a minute. It wasn't just one old lady. There were 3, all crammed in the front seat, each with stringy hair covering her eyes, bony hands, and a charcoal-colored sackcloth dress. The one driving said, "Long Island out of Metro fare bonus." Ha! She floored the accelerator and my head slammed back against the backrest. A pre-recorded voice came on over the speaker. "Hi, this is Ganymede, cupbearer to Zeus, and when I'm out buying wine for the Lord of the Skies, I always buckle up." I looked down and found a large black chain instead of a seat belt. I decided I wasn't that desperate yet. The cab sped around the corner of West Broadway, and the gray lady sitting in the middle screeched, "Look out! Go left!" "Well, if you'd give me the eye, Tempest, I could see that," the driver complained. Wait a minute. Give her the eye? I didn't have time to ask questions because the driver swerved to avoid an oncoming delivery truck, ran over the curb with a jaw-rattling thump, and flew into the next block. "Wasp," the third lady said to the driver, "give me the girl's coin. I want to bite it." "You bit it last time, Anger," said the driver, whose name must have been Wasp. "It's my turn." "Is not," yelled the one called Anger. The middle one, Tempest, screamed, "Red light!" "Brake!" yelled Anger. Instead, Wasp floored the accelerator and rode up on the curb, screeching around another corner and knocking over a newspaper box. She left my stomach somewhere back on Broome Street. "Excuse me," I said, "but can you see?" "No!" screamed Wasp from behind the wheel. "No!" screamed Tempest from the middle. "Of course!" screamed Anger by the shotgun window. I looked at Annabeth. "They're blind?" Not completely, Annabeth said. They have an eye. One eye? Yeah. Each? No, one eye total. Next to me, Tyson groaned and grabbed the seat. Not feeling so good. Oh, man, I said, because I'd seen Tyson get carsick on school field trips, and it was not something you wanted to be within 50 feet of. Hang in there, big guy. Anybody got a garbage bag or something? The three ladies were too busy squabbling to pay me any attention. I looked over at Annabeth, who was hanging on for dear life, and I gave her a, "Why did you do this to me?" look. "Hey," she said, "Gray Sister's taxi is the fastest way to camp." "Then why didn't you take that from Virginia?" "Outside their service area," she said, like that should be obvious. "They only serve greater New York and surrounding communities." "We've had famous people in this cab," Anchor exclaimed. "Jason, you remember him?" "Don't remind me," Wasp wailed. "And we didn't have a cab back then, you old bat. That was 3,000 years ago. Give me the tooth." Anger tried to grab at Wasp's mouth, but Wasp swatted her hand away. "Only if Tempest gives me the eye." "No," Tempest screeched. "You had it yesterday." "But I'm driving, you old hag." "Excuses. Turn. That was your turn." Wasp swerved hard into Delancey Street, squishing me between Tyson and the door. She punched the gas, and we shot up the Williamsburg Bridge at 70 miles an hour. The three sisters were fighting for real now, slapping each other as Anger tried to grab at Wasp's face, and Wasp tried to grab at Tempest's. With their hair flying and their mouths open, screaming at each other, I realized none of the sisters had any teeth except for Wasp, who had one mossy yellow incisor. Instead of eyes, they just had closed, sunken eyelids, except for Anger, who had one bloodshot green eye that stared at everything hungrily, as if it couldn't get enough of anything it saw. Finally, Anger, who had the advantage of sight, managed to yank the tooth out of her sister Wasp's mouth. This made Wasp so mad she swerved toward the edge of the Williamsburg Bridge, yelling, "Have it back! Have it back!" Tyson groaned and clutched his stomach. If anybody's interested," I said, "we're going to die." "Don't worry," Annabeth told me, sounding pretty worried. "The Gray Sisters know what they're doing. They're really very wise." This coming from the daughter of Athena, but I wasn't exactly reassured. We were skimming along the edge of a bridge 130 feet above the East River. "Yes, wise." Anger grinned in the rearview mirror, showing off her newly acquired tooth. "We know things." "Every street in Manhattan," Wasp bragged, still hitting her sister. "The capital of Nepal." "The location you seek," Tempest added. Immediately, her sisters pummeled her from either side, screaming, "Be quiet, be quiet, he didn't even ask yet." "What?" I said. "What location? I'm not seeking any." "Nothing," Tempest said. "You're right, boy. Nothing." "Tell me." "No," they all screamed. "The last time we told it was horrible," Tempest said. "I tossed in a lake," Anger agreed. "Years to find it again," Wasp moaned. "And speaking of that, give it back." "No," yelled Anger. Wasp yelled. "Gimme." She whacked her sister Anger on the back. There was a sickening pop, and something flew out of Anger's face. Anger fumbled for it, trying to catch it, but she only managed to bat it with the back of her hand. The slimy green orb sailed over her shoulder and into the back seat, straight into my lap. I jumped so hard my head hit the ceiling and the eyeball rolled away. "I can't see," all three sisters yelled. "Give me the eye," Wasp wailed. "Give her the eye," Annabeth screamed. "I don't have it," I said. "There by your foot," Annabeth said. "Don't step on it. Get it." "I am not picking that up." The taxi slammed against the guardrail and skidded along with a horrible grinding noise. The whole car shuddered, billowing gray smoke as if it were about to dissolve from the strain. "Gonna be sick," Tyson warned. "Annabeth," I yelled, "let Tyson use your backpack." "Are you crazy? Get the eye." Wasp yanked the wheel, and the taxi swerved away from the rail. We hurtled down the bridge toward Brooklyn, going faster than any human taxi. The Gray Sisters screeched and pummeled each other and cried out for their eye. At last, I steeled my nerves. I ripped off a chunk of my tie-dyed T-shirt, which is already falling apart from all the burn marks, and used it to pick the eyeball off the floor. "Nice boy," Anger cried, as if she somehow knew I had her missing peeper. "Give it back." "Not until you explain," I told her. "What were you talking about, the location I seek?" "No time," Tempest cried. "Accelerating." I looked out the window. Sure enough, trees and cars and whole neighborhoods were now zipping by in a gray blur. We were already out of Brooklyn, heading through the middle of Long Island. Percy, Annabeth warned, they can't find our destination without the eye. We'll just keep accelerating until we break into a million pieces. First, they have to tell me, I said, or I'll open the window and throw the eye into oncoming traffic. No, the sisters wailed. Too dangerous. I'm rolling down the window. Wait, the sisters screamed. 30, 31, 75, 12. They belted it out like a quarterback calling a play. What do you mean? I said, that makes no sense. 30, 31, 75, 12, Anger wailed. That's all we can tell you. Now, give us the eye. Almost to camp. We were off the highway now, zipping through the countryside of northern Long Island. I could see Half-Blood Hill ahead of us with its giant pine tree at the crest, the Leah's tree, which contained the life force of a fallen hero. Percy, Annabeth said more urgently, give them the eye now. I decided not to argue. I threw the eye into Wasp's lap. The old lady snatched it up, pushed it into her eye socket like somebody putting in a contact lens, and blinked. Whoa! She slammed on the brakes. The taxi spun 4 or 5 times in a cloud of smoke and squealed to a halt in the middle of the farm road at the base of Half-Blood Hill. Tyson let loose a huge belch. Better now. All right, I told the Gray sisters. Now tell me what those numbers mean. No time, Annabeth opened her door. We have to get out now. I was about to ask why when I looked up at Half-Blood Hill and understood. At the crest of the hill was a group of campers, and they were under attack. That's the end of Chapter 3. Now we're on Chapter 4, and it's called Tyson Plays with Fire, and I'm Terry Bible Knight, your reader. Mythologically speaking, if there's anything I hate worse than trios of old ladies, it's bulls. Last summer, I fought the Minotaur on top of Half-Blood Hill. This time, what I saw up there was even worse. 2 bulls, and not just regular bulls, bronze ones the size of elephants. And even that wasn't bad enough. Naturally, they had to breathe fire, too. As soon as we exited the taxi, the Gray sisters peeled out, heading back to New York, where life was safer. They didn't even wait for their extra 3 drachma payment. They just left us on the side of the road. Annabeth with nothing but her backpack and knife. Tyson and me still in our burned-up, tie-dyed gym clothes. Oh, man, said Annabeth, looking at the battle raging on the hill. What worried me most weren't the bulls themselves, or the 10 heroes in full battle armor who were getting their bronze-plated booties whooped. What worried me was that the bulls were ranging all over the hill, even around the back side of the pine tree, and that shouldn't have been possible. The camp's magic boundaries didn't allow monsters to cross past the Leah's tree, but the metal bulls were doing it anyway. One of the heroes shouted, "Border Patrol, to me!" A girl's voice, gruff and familiar. Border Patrol, I thought. The camp didn't have a Border Patrol. It's Clarice, Annabeth said. Come on, we have to help her. Normally, rushing to Clarice's aid would not have been high on my to-do list. She was one of the biggest bullies at camp. The first time we met, she tried to introduce my head to a toilet. She was also a daughter of Ares, and I'd had a very serious disagreement with her father last summer, so now the god of war and all his children basically hated my guts. Still, she was in trouble. Her fellow warriors were scattering, running in panic as the bulls charged. The grass was burning in huge swaths around the pine tree. One hero screamed and waved his arms as he ran in circles, the horsehair plume on his helmet blazing like a fiery mohawk. Clarice's own armor was charred. She was fighting with a broken spear shaft, the other end embedded uselessly in the metal joint of one bull's shoulder. I uncapped my ballpoint pen. It shimmered, growing longer and heavier until I held the bronze sword Anaklusmos in my hands. Tyson, stay here. I don't want you taking any more chances. No, Annabeth said. We need him. I stared at her. He's mortal. He got lucky with the dodgeballs, but he can't. Percy, do you know what those are up there? The Colchis bulls, made by Hephaestus himself. We can't fight them without Medea's sunscreen SPF 50,000. We'll get burned to a crisp. Medea's what? Annabeth rummaged through her backpack and cursed. I had a jar of tropical coconut scent sitting on my nightstand at home. Why didn't I bring it? I had learned a long time ago not to question Annabeth too much. It just made me more confused. Look, I don't know what you're talking about, but I'm not going to let Tyson get fried. Percy, Tyson, stay back. I raised my sword. I'm going in. Tyson tried to protest, but was already running up the hill toward Clarice, who was yelling at her patrol, trying to get them into phalanx formation. It was a good idea. The few who were listening lined up shoulder to shoulder, locking their shields to form an oxhide and bronze wall, their spears bristling over the top like porcupine quills. Unfortunately, Clarice could only muster 6 campers. The other 4 were still running around with their helmets on fire. Annabeth ran toward them, trying to help. She taunted one of the bulls into chasing her, then turned invisible, completely confusing the monster. The other bull charged Clarice's line. I was halfway up the hill, not close enough to help. Clarice hadn't even seen me yet. The bull moved deadly fast for something so big. Its metal hide gleamed in the sun. It had fist-sized rubies for eyes and horns of polished silver. When it opened its hinged mouth, a column of white-hot flame blasted out. "Hold the line," Clarice ordered her warriors. Whatever else you could say about Clarice, she was brave. She was a big girl with cruel eyes like her father's. She looked like she was born to wear Greek battle armor, but I didn't see how even she could stand against that bull's charge. Unfortunately, at that moment, the other bull lost interest in finding Annabeth. It turned, wheeling around behind Clarice on her unprotected side. "Behind you," I yelled. "Look out!" I shouldn't have said anything because all I did was startle her. But bull number 1 crashed into her shield. The phalanx broke. Clarice went flying backward and landed in a smoldering patch of grass. The bull charged past her, but not before blasting the other heroes with its fiery breath. Their shields melted right off their arms. They dropped their weapons and ran as bull number 2 closed in on Clarice for the kill. I lunged forward and grabbed Clarice by the straps of her armor. I dragged her out of the way just as bull number 2 freight train passed. I gave it a good swipe with Riptide and cut a huge gash in its flank, but the monster just creaked and groaned and kept on going. It hadn't touched me, but I could feel the heat of its metal skin. Its body temperature could have microwaved a frozen burrito. "Let me go!" Clarice pummeled my hand. "Percy, curse you!" I dropped her in a heap next to the pine tree and turned to face the bulls. We were on the inside slope of the hill now, the valley of Camp Half-Blood directly below us. The cabins, the training facilities, the big house, all of it at risk if these bulls got past us. Annabeth shouted orders to the other heroes, telling them to spread out and keep the bulls distracted. Bull number 1 ran a wide arc, making its way back toward me. As it passed the middle of the hill, where the invisible boundary line should have kept it out, it slowed down a little, as if it were struggling against a strong wind, but then it broke through and kept coming. Bull number 2 turned to face me, fire sputtering from the gash I'd cut in its side. I couldn't tell if it felt any pain, but its ruby eyes seemed to glare at me like I'd just made things personal. I couldn't fight both bulls at the same time. I'd have to take down bull number 2 first, cut its head off before bull number 1 charged back into range. My arms already felt tired. I realized how long it had been since I'd worked out with Riptide, how out of practice I was. I lunged, but bull number 2 blew flames at me. I rolled aside as the air turned to pure heat. All the oxygen was sucked out of my lungs. My foot caught on something, a tree root maybe, and pain shot up my ankle. Still, I managed to slash with my sword and lop off part of the monster's snout. It galloped away, wild and disoriented. But before I could feel too good about that, I tried to stand, and my left leg buckled underneath me. My ankle was sprained and maybe broken. Bull number 1, charged straight toward me. No way could I crawl out of its path. Annabeth shouted, "Tyson, help him!" Somewhere near the crest of the hill, Tyson wailed, "Can't get through. I, Annabeth Chase, give you permission to enter camp." Thunder shook the hillside. Suddenly, Tyson was there, barreling toward me, yelling, "Percy needs help!" Before I could tell him no, he dove between me and the bull, just as it unleashed a nuclear firestorm. "Tyson!" I yelled. The blast swirled around him like a red tornado. I could only see the black silhouette of his body. I knew with horrible certainty that my friend had just been turned into a column of ashes. But when the fire died, Tyson was still standing there, completely unharmed. Not even his grungy clothes were scorched. The bull must have been as surprised as I was. Before it could unleash a second blast, Tyson balled his fist and slammed them into the bull's face. Bad cow! His fist made a crater where the bronze bull's snout used to be. 2 small columns of flame shot out of its ears. Tyson hit it again, and the bronze crumbled under his hands like aluminum foil. The bull's face now looked like a sock puppet turned inside out. "Down!" Tyson yelled. The bull staggered and fell on its back. Its legs moved feebly in the air, steam coming out of its ruined head in odd places. Annabeth ran over to check on me. My ankle felt like it was filled with acid, but she gave me some Olympian nectar to drink from her canteen, and I immediately started to feel better. There was a burning smell that I later learned was me. The hair on my arms had been completely singed off. "The other bull?" I asked. Annabeth pointed down the hill. Clarice had taken care of bad cow number 2. She'd impaled it through the back leg with a celestial bronze spear. Now, with its snout half gone and a huge gash in its side, it was trying to run in slow motion, going in circles like some kind of merry-go-round animal. Clarice pulled off her helmet and marched toward us. A strand of her stringy brown hair was smoldering, but she didn't seem to notice. "You ruin everything," she yelled at me. "I had it under control." I was too stunned to answer. Annabeth grumbled, "Good to see you too, Clarice." "Ah!" Clarice screamed. "Don't ever try saving me again." "Clarice," Annabeth said, "you've got wounded campers." That sobered her up. Even Clarice cared about the soldiers under her command. "I'll be back," she growled, then trudged off to assess the damage. I stared at Tyson. He didn't die. Tyson looked down like he was embarrassed. "I am sorry. Came to help. Disobeyed you." "My fault," Annabeth said. "I had no choice. I had to let Tyson cross the boundary line to save you. Otherwise, you would have died." "Let him cross the boundary line?" I asked. "But, Percy," she said, "have you ever looked at Tyson closely? I mean, in the face. Ignore the mist and really look at him." The mist makes humans see only what their brains can process. I knew it could fool demigods too, but I looked Tyson in the face. It wasn't easy. I'd always had trouble looking directly at him, though I'd never quite understood why. I thought it was just because he always had peanut butter in his crooked teeth. I forced myself to look at his big bumpy nose and then a little higher at his eyes and... Oh, no, not eyes. One eye. One large calf-brown eye right in the middle of his forehead with thick lashes and big tears trickling down his cheeks on either side. "Tyson," I stammered, "you're a Cyclops," Annabeth offered. "A baby, by the looks of him. Probably why he couldn't get past the boundary line as easily as the bulls. Tyson's one of the homeless orphans." "One of the what?" "They're in almost all the big cities," Annabeth said distastefully. "They're mistakes, Percy. Children of nature, spirits, and gods. Well, one god in particular, usually. And they don't always come out right. No one wants them. They get tossed aside. They grow up wild on the streets. I don't know how this one found you, but he obviously likes you. We should take him to Chiron and let him decide what to do." "But the fire, how—" "He's a Cyclops." Annabeth paused as if she were remembering something unpleasant. "They work the forges of the gods. They have to be immune to fire. That's what I was trying to tell you." I was completely shocked. How had I never realized what Tyson was? But I didn't have much time to think about it just then. The whole side of the hill was burning. Wounded heroes needed attention, and there were still 2 banged-up bronze bulls to dispose of, which I didn't figure would fit in our normal recycling bins. Clarice came back over and wiped the soot off her forehead. "Jackson, if you can stand, get up. We need to carry the wounded back to the big house and let Tantalus know what's happened." "Tantalus?" I asked. "The activities director," Clarice said impatiently. "Chiron is the activities director, and where's Argus? He's head of security. He should be here." Clarice made a sour face. "Argus got fired. You 2 have been gone too long. Things are changing." "But Chiron, he's trained kids to fight monsters for over 3,000 years. He can't just be gone. What happened?" "That happened," Clarice snapped. She pointed to Thalia's tree. Every camper knew the story behind the tree. 6 years ago, Grover, Annabeth, and 2 other demigods named Thalia and Luke had come to Camp Half-Blood chased by an army of monsters. When they got cornered on top of this hill, Thalia, a daughter of Zeus, had made her last stand here to give her friends time to reach safety. As she was dying, her father, Zeus, took pity on her and changed her into a pine tree. Her spirit had reinforced the magic borders of the camp, protecting it from monsters. The pine had been here ever since, strong and healthy. But now its needles were yellow. A huge pile of dead ones littered the base of the tree. In the center of the trunk, 3 feet from the ground, was a puncture mark the size of a bullet hole, oozing green sap. A sliver of ice ran through my chest. Now I understood why the camp was in danger. The magical borders were failing because Thalia's tree was dying. Someone had poisoned it. And that's the end of chapter 4.